Like you were made in God's image. Like you weren't made inept to solve creative problems in your life. Like you have agency. What can you do? Could work on my curiosity and start to ask questions of other people. If you ask a question, you might get rejected. And that is the price to play. You don't get connection without the possibility for rejection. You can't do it. So people are like, I would like to avoid rejection, but I would like connection. And I would say that does not work that way. Awkward, but worth it. It was my friend Andy used to say all the time.
Yeah.
He goes, it's awkward, but it's awkward, but worth it, right?
Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to TheWalk podcast. This is a place where we can answer honest questions, talk about hard issues, and walk alongside one another as we explore how spirituality fits into real life. I'm Gil, I'm your host, and today we're talking to Jennette about connecting with others. Jennette is one of our multi-talented worship pastors here at Mountain. His Instagram account recently grew by 110,000 followers in 8 months, where he is helping so many folks with actionable and practical advice for learning social skills. He is the husband to the lovely Mindy and a dedicated dad to Skylar, Leland, and Selah. Seriously, whether you need worship leadership, soft skills coaching, or simply a listening ear, Cole is just an all-around amazing guy to call. Let's be honest, connecting with other people is hard. There are so many real barriers that keep us from having the relationships we long for, or even taking that intimidating first step. I think you'll find this conversation with Cole to be really practical as he helps us understand what it means to connect well with other people. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome. I am sitting across the table from my good friend Jennette. Cole, welcome on, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about the shoes you're wearing.
My shoes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked about my shoes. My camo slip-on shoes from Payless. It was back in 2017. We'd gone through a really hard time. We were in Colorado. I love bow hunting. I love Colorado.
Okay.
And a friend of mine invited me on this once-in-a-lifetime hunting trip. His friends have been going on for 2 decades, where we rode horses into the wilderness. And anyhow,
Magical.
We stayed in this tent that was like a canvas tent that we put over trees that they had hewn and hidden in a hill. It was incredible. And he said I needed camp shoes along with my boots. And so I bought these shoes.
Mm-hmm. So outdoor. To give people a picture, they're like camo.
They're beautiful, yeah. It just looks like if you had a friend that was a redneck that didn't feel like tying their laces or was just not intelligent enough to tie their laces, they would wear these.
Yeah.
And I don't know which I am.
Yeah.
But I just thought I'd wear them today.
Well, yeah. You wear a lot of camo for someone who maybe isn't in Colorado. I don't know, but
Georgia. It's the Georgia in me.
The Georgia in you, yeah. Yeah. You bring that flavor to our community, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Okay, Cole. Today we're talking about how to connect with others. I think one of the things we're seeing a lot around us is just there's some very real barriers for building friendships that last, but also just connecting with people in general. It's kind of like the number one thing I see in conversations with young adults and maybe probably students, and even as you grow up, it's getting more and more difficult to connect with others and build lasting relationships. For young people who are maybe in this world, can you share a little bit of your story and what was it like connecting with others, making friendships, maybe in your young adult years? Let's start there.
All right, young adult years.
Mm-hmm.
Like my early 20s, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a stat, I don't know, somebody that was very smart, I'm sure came up with it, that said something like 2,000 hours it takes to build a friendship. And once you have kids, I have 3 kids, I have 3 teenagers, and married with kids, time becomes sparse. Mm-hmm. And so early in my 20s, my kids were little, and my friend Matt, he's still my best friend to this day, we still keep up. We would go out on a boat. I had bought a boat. Fun fact, I lived in Florida for 7 years with small children and never went to Disney. So that'll lose some listeners right there. I bought a boat instead. I then sold that boat and bought a guitar. So just all my values really condensed into one sentence.
That tells us a lot. It tells us a lot about who you are.
If you wanted to know who I was, didn't go to Disney, bought a boat, sold the boat, got a guitar. And on that boat, we spent we spent a lot of time. We would go out like after he was actually the young adults pastor at our
Cool.
church, and I'd be like, dude, we're gonna go tarpon fishing. This guy said if you fish with snapper carcasses at night under the Matlacha Bridge, you can catch tarpon. And so we went out and we would just sit on the boat and we would try to catch. We'd never caught one tarpon out there, never. I think we caught a couple catfish, but we were logging time. And they say with young kids, you spell love Time. Like there's no such thing as quality time. There's just time. And I think we're obsessed with like efficiency and stuff nowadays. And in my experience, like friendship is made through time and repetition, and you don't get to community without reps and time. So like, we were sitting on a boat at 1 a.m., not catching anything.
Nowhere to go. Just sitting and talking. I don't remember much of what we talked about, but we logged the time so that then when meaningful conversations came up, there was enough of a tether there that we could contain them. Yeah. Hours and hours. You said 2,000 hours. There's a lot of stats. A guy recently who's like, find your like 168 person. It's like 168 hours in a week, or I don't know how many hours are there in a week. 200. I don't know. But it's just that the point
Can
was.
Producer Emily do the math for us and
yes.
tell us in our ears.
Show notes. Put in the show notes.
Put in the show notes.
Everything. Put in the show notes.
Everything's in the show notes.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, well, tell me a little bit. You've been on a journey of helping people kind of connect with each other in whatever space. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about that.
So what's interesting about that is those two things have since become related, but they weren't initially. Initially I started, I like to tell my kids that their dad's an online influencer because that makes them like, it makes their soul hurt a little bit. That you would think
hate it, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, do you tell your friends that your dad
and their dad never took them to Disney World, so but that's a different
They do
point.
include that detail often, yeah. So I started this like Instagram thing. I decided I didn't want to use Instagram for like personal connection and stuff, that I wanted to use it to serve the world. And I specifically, when I was in my early 20s, my social intelligence was quite low. And so I would just do really dumb things. I didn't even know they had happened. I like still to this day, we'll go back to like Florida and somebody would be like, yeah, I remember that time you said this thing and it crushed my heart. And I was like, what? I didn't know about this till now.
Yeah.
I was just socially unaware. And so I thought, I took 10, 15 years of reading books and reading between the lines and having kind mentors and friends that eventually told me the truth. Like it's taken me so long to get good at interacting with people on a daily basis. Maybe I'll just talk to Cole 15 years ago on my phone in my car and just give him all the advice that I wish I had had.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some other Cole out there and I can just fast forward. I could skip a bunch of pain for him if I can just give him that. So I started doing that. And what was crazy is, and I think it was you when you talked about there being like a loneliness epidemic that the Surgeon General said something. I think that was the thing that it hit on, was you had a lot of people going like, I feel alone and I don't know what to do about it. And there was specifically, I thought the only people it would serve were the people that were socially awkward like I was. And it didn't. Like all these really like winsome people were like, hey, thanks for that. I've been wanting to work on how I connect with people. And I realized that it's weird. Social connection, we talk about it in philosophical, like real clout, like highfalutin type stuff, but we like don't actually get on the ground of going like, hey, that person's avoiding you because they were excited and you said something critical. But literally, I mean, how many people's lives suck right now? They're like terrible relationally because of small little things. It's not some big philosophical thing that they could probably articulate. This is what I find over and over with the work that I do online, is that people, they're like, yeah, I got it. But then I go, okay, well, ask me an open-ended question to start a conversation. And they go, well, do you like your coffee? And I was like, yeah, you don't know how to ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
Like that's a yes or no question. Or there's just a gap between the practical tools that we need. It's like this big important thing, but like other than like corporate workshops and stuff, I just didn't see a lot of people like giving practical tools. They had like philosophies and you'd read whole books and you'd leave and be like, or there were tools on the internet, but they were in like sales books,
Sure.
Like never split the difference, the like switch. And they felt gross.
Or
they
like
felt more
leadership
about how to go to
material.
a bar and, have a one night stand, how to win that person over,
Sure.
as opposed to like how to have an initial conversation that leads to connection, that leads to friendship, that leads to community. Like all the tools that we needed for that were in these like sales manuals.
Uh-huh.
And then all the people that were talking about community seemed to be talking about it in these big philosophical terms that I couldn't do anything with.
Right.
And I think that's the nerve that the content struck. I don't
Yeah.
think it was really great delivery or whatever. I think there's just a really real need.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody listening right now is like, yes, I feel like I have to read between the lines or like, and then the beauty of the internet is, you know, in person, if I told you something, you're like, yeah, I already knew that. Don't insult me by telling me that. Well, the internet offers this beautiful opportunity to just tell people the basics. And they're not insulted because they're probably sitting in their car when they look at it. You know, nobody's around. You know,
Sure.
what's the phrase? I always wanted to know, but I was too embarrassed to ask.
Yeah.
Like one of the three
Asking
things.
for a friend.
I'm asking for a friend, too
Yeah.
embarrassed to ask. So anyhow, that's a big rant on the whole. I have like an Instagram account that got really big. I think just because, right? Like I don't want to read a sales manual.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to talk about philosophy. Like I actually am in
Yeah.
the trenches trying to figure out how to connect with people. Please help me to do it. And that's why, yeah, people like Jefferson Fisher or like my account or other people, like there's just, because I went and looked to try to find if there were, and there's just not a lot
There's
of them.
nothing, yeah. And there's, just a gigantic population of people, no matter their age, who feel that gap of, we really long for community. We're all looking for the same sort of thing, but we don't have the practical tools to do it yet. And so you've kind of found that that's been really, really helpful for people, which is really cool.
Yeah, to not overly spiritualize and overly is philosophize a word?
Philosophize, sure. Yeah.
I would like to suggest it as a word. Is it? You're my word friend.
Philosophize, yeah, sure.
All right, it checks out. So if
We'll look it up.
somebody Google it later and see if Gil was right. Yeah, to not overly spiritualize and overly philosophize, though there are philosophical points and there are spiritual realities, but to like really make it practical, like help me. I don't know how to talk to my mother-in-law.
Uh-huh.
What? How? Somebody help me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where I'm good. I try not to get stuck in the big heady stuff.
Yeah. If you were to say like, this is the thing that keeps a lot of people from truly getting to the place they need in relationships.
It's not interesting, the answer.
Okay.
But it's important. I feel like that's a lot of life though, isn't it? You're like, this isn't going to be the most interesting thing you hear today. You might even roll your eyes a little bit, and I'm sorry. But it's super important.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that I find is that people are focused on a lot of things they can't control. I feel like the world is kind of set up right now to drive us crazy, right? I watch news things that I can't do anything about. I see things and I compare myself to them. And then I'm fed a diet of excuses and complaints.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of find yourself in this stuck place where you feel alone. But the narrative, at least in my mind and so many people I talk to, is it's just blaming other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted something that's going to exclude you from community and relationship the quickest, it would probably be blaming people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I want to retract that. You actually can have community blaming people, but it will only be with other people who like to blame people.
Sure.
So a lot of people are like, this person's exhausting. You know, like all my friends are like this.
Mm-hmm. Toxic is the word that I hear a lot. Yeah. They're just so toxic or something like that. Yeah.
I just would like a shout out. We were talking about it before, but the power of, power of self-care, power of me or something, Instagram channel.
Instagram page. Yeah.
Is lovely because it's like ironic self-care. And it's like the toxic culture. Like, what's the odds? Everybody in your world's toxic. But you, I mean, you're great.
It's everyone else's fault, is what you're saying.
Yeah. One of the posts I think I told you earlier was like, my therapist told me, what if it's everybody else's fault? And that really hit me.
There's really something to that. Yeah.
Because it just seems like if you want to connect with other people, you're going to have to start by being the type of person that can connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not interesting. It's not interesting, but self-leadership is going to start because it's not, the world is a mess. Like I want to empathize and be like, the world is a mess. It is set up to make you feel lonely and compare everything and feel like everything's burning down. Like it is kind of set up in a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And you're only in charge of you.
Mm-hmm.
So, write everything down that's making you feel lonely and scratch out everything you can't do anything about.
Mm-hmm.
Just scratch it out. Well, I can't do anything about that. 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 And then what's left? You might not have anything left. That's how trained your brain might be to just complain. And you're like, well, why do you feel hopeless? Well, you got trained to complain about everything you can't do anything about. And at some point, you're like, let's find a starting place. To me, the place to start is curiosity. I feel like you have so many opinions and so few questions. So many opinions and so few questions.
Yeah.
And I watch dual monologue. Like I just sit in public places and listen to people have, I was sitting on the plane and these two people were talking about their grandkids and nobody asked a question. I bet they talked for 25 minutes. And I refer to this as a dual monologue. It's not a conversation.
Sure.
It is two people
interrupting, button back and forth.
Yeah.
Just inserting thoughts.
Oh, yeah. I have to load my grandson's Roblox. I'm like an ATM machine. Exactly. My grandson said to me the other day, that's exactly what I was thinking. And you're like,
that reminds me of this thing in my own life. Yeah.
Yeah. I call it the, oh, yeah, me.
Oh, yeah, me.
This is almost every conversation I hear in public is just a repeat of, oh, yeah, me. Somebody goes, and what's crazy is I see the bid for connection so often in it, right? So somebody goes, I don't know, we'll pick anything. Yeah, I was walking the dog this morning and I was like, man, it's so good to be out early. I need to exercise more. And the other person, I mean, I'm thinking, oh, there's so much to be interested in there. And they go, yeah, I just signed up for Planet Fitness the other day and I was using the squat machine. And I was like, they didn't ask. They don't care. Yeah. You weren't curious. So now you have two non-curious people with opinions, just kind of throwing them at each other and they're bouncing off. And they were like, I don't know why I feel lonely.
Right.
So to me, starting with curiosity, I think that's the place.
That's interesting though, because it is, both of those people are coming from a place of really wanting to be heard and known and seen and all the things we just talked about. But because that's what both of them are leading with, they're actually not connecting. Yeah.
But I see two people really wanting to connect.
Yeah.
And some people would say, maybe somebody is listening to it right now and they're like, that's just a normal conversation call. And I don't think it is. I think that we've just come a long way from the days of like Benjamin Franklin. Like if you read his biography, he'll talk about they had groups of people that would get together and they would practice conversation. Do you know why? Because a great conversation will elevate your status in the world because nobody likes a bad conversation with somebody.
Sure.
Right? And they didn't have cell phones. It was letters and in-person conversations. And so they would practice being good at conversation. And it's just a skill that's just really, really, really waned over the years to the degree that now we think dual monologue. What's funny is I posted a thing on the internet about dual monologue versus conversation. And they were like, the second one sounds like my therapist. And I said, that's because the rise in therapy is partly because we need to address mental health. It's partly because nobody has a friend that can ask them a good question. You sat at my house and asked me great questions.
Sure.
And I think therapists, there are things you need a trained professional to work through. A large portion, and I think therapists would jump on board with this. They're like, a large portion of what they're doing is holding space and asking questions. Like a curious person that cares about you will do wonders for your mental health and is cheaper, frankly, than a therapist.
Yeah.
Like, and it's really like, there's just the rising need. Like they can't train enough therapists right now.
Yeah.
But you can't start by complaining and demanding that people be curious about you.
Right.
Instead of demanding that the world be the thing that you need, start by being, they say, be the leader you wish you had. Be the friend you wish you had. Well, I don't know why anybody on my street doesn't care about me. Who are you? Who are you going and caring about? Who are you asking questions of? When you meet people in the grocery line, when you meet people, like, are you wondering about them and are you asking them questions? Or are you just like, I just wish people would ask me more questions?
Yeah.
Well, that's where I feel like that's where we're stuck. And I think there is a growing number of people that are like, I don't want to be stuck anymore. I would like to actually work on this.
Right.
And those people, I think, really grab onto the tools.
It totally flips the paradigm upside down to where it's now it is kind of on me, all right, to connect with other people. And you have some sort of agency in it that you often don't realize you have.
Dude, how good does it feel to remember that you have agency to fix the problems in your life? Like you were made in God's image. Like you weren't made inept to solve creative problems in your life. Like you have agency. What can you do? That's why that exercise, just scratch all the things out you can't do anything about.
Yeah.
I hear you. Those are hard. You can't do a darn thing about them. So let's move them over here. Okay, could work on my curiosity and start to ask questions of other people.
Yeah, so you started with curiosity, right? You had a couple things. So one was just like the power of listening, which could be a whole other episode, honestly, just the way healing and all that stuff happens through just being a listening ear to other people.
Powerful.
So curiosity is one that you would probably start with. What else?
Well, can I share a tool like how to get to curiosity?
Sure.
So curiosity is one of those things where, so people will say the felt need in curiosity is, I don't know what we would talk about. What would we even talk about? How many times you sat there and then like you feel like the burning self-awareness of, oh God, this is awkward. Oh no, silence, you know, because it's the great enemy of the modern era.
What do I say? Yeah.
What do I say? So that's usually just a lack of curiosity, but lack of curiosity it can be fixed. And the beauty of fixing curiosity is that you don't have to be with anybody to fix curiosity. You can be all alone, taking a walk through a park and working on your curiosity simply by going, what is it like to be them? I wonder, is this family getting together, or is this like extended family? Is this a work picnic? I wonder what they're grilling. I wonder how they picked it. Like, keep going, and then start connecting it to your own life. You can do that internally. And I don't think anybody's curiosity ember is like completely doused. I just think it's very like little. And as you start to stir that up, it's a muscle just like anything else. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And you're going to find that if you'll do the work of asking, like, what am I learning from this moment? What is it like to be them? Things like that. A year later, you're going to be like I get overwhelmed, like not knowing where to fit in all the questions I have in my mind for other people.
Yeah.
Like what was the movie? I forget what movie it was. It was that guy from The Big Sick. He's very funny. And he goes, I'm literally made of questions right now.
That's you. That's you a year in or 2 years in, right?
I've adapted that phrase. I've just used that phrase a lot. I'm literally made of questions right now, you know?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, we had my horse in my wedding. I am made of questions right now. If you work on curiosity and you get to curious, then you're going to have the opportunity to get to a place of connectedness. Because if you don't get curious, that's kind of the 3 stages I see are get to curious, get to connected, get to community. A lot of people are like, I need community. And you're like, well, you don't start with community. Community takes time. It takes showing up. It takes reps. You can start with curious all alone. And then the second one will be connected.
Cool. Yeah. And people are just, I think about that too. And I'm like, people are way more interesting than you would immediately think. Like every human I meet, there's something weird or awesome about them that if you sit with them for like 10 to 15 minutes, you'll take in and learn. It'll blow your mind.
Yes. My friend Chad Littlefield has a saying. He says, people are full of a lifetime of ungoogleable information.
Whoa.
I could not Google your experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of beautiful. One other thing I would say is that if you want people to share, like if you want, you're going to need to, sometimes you ask questions and people are only willing to share to the degree that you're willing to share. So there's some measure of going first and turning up your weird dial a little bit. You know what I mean? Like the volcanoes, usually it's the tip that pops out of the water first as they come up out of the water. I've never seen an island emerge. I think Maui pulled them up. Is that?
I don't yet. Listen, no, I'm not a doctor. I don't know.
It's a Moana reference. You don't have any kids, so you're not watching a lot of animated films, but I am.
Okay.
The weird part, I think, should emerge kind of in a conversation. And if you are willing to let it emerge, you know what I mean?
Sets the tone, yeah.
It sets the tone. And then that other person can share their interesting thing. But if you're just constantly sharing your most mundane, boring thing, don't be shocked when the world mirrors that back at you and shares their boring, mundane things. Yeah. So if that's what you're into, you just like boring, mundane conversations, by all means.
Go for it.
You can talk about how long the paint took to dry before you could do the second coat. That's good. It's like a proverbial example. You know what I mean? Watching the paint dry.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe, yeah. So, but, share like whatever your weird thing is. You know? What are you into that you like? What's a surprise about you? And then like invite them.
Everyone's got it.
People are weird and funny and interesting. And if you think people are uninteresting, the problem's you and your curiosity, because I promise they're interesting.
That's really good. Yep, that's where the gold is. All right, so curiosity, connection.
Yeah, get to
your
curious.
Second one, right?
Yeah, get to curious, and then get to connected. When you start to ask questions of people, I really hate boring conversations with people. And so I think a lot of people think that if they have to have small talk, they're going to have boring conversations. Small talk's like, the shallow end of the pool. Hey, how was your morning? blah, 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 blah. We were doing this. Oh, tell me about that. But you have to pay attention to in your own body and mind and heart and the other person's body, mind, and heart. Pay attention. When does that interest rise? I think a lot of times when we're nervous to connect with somebody at first, what we'll do is they'll say something and then we generate a question in our head and then we'll just ask it because we're more concerned about the conversation having fluidity than interest. Don't worry about it. Let it be a little awkward. Find the thing you're actually both interested in because once you're both interested in a thing, that chemistry and that connection happens. And so we get to curious. And then once we get to curious, we've got some questions to ask. And a good question, I'll just drop this here, is I would not ask people why questions. It typically puts people on the defensive.
Sure.
How and what are great questions. I find a lot of people are asking yes and no questions, thinking they're asking how and what questions. So do you like your coffee is not a good question. But I noticed it's Starbucks. I don't know. Can we say Starbucks on here? I don't know.
Sure.
We
said Disney and
okay, yeah. I don't know why Starbucks was the one that triggered
countless movies.
Yeah. What made you stop at Starbucks this morning? And then there's probably a story baked in there as opposed to yes or no. So a how or what question. And then when people share, find the thing you're interested in, right? When people share, there's usually more in there than just the answer. There's context all around that answer. And so even something as basic or simple as you getting coffee this morning, if I pressed in, you didn't make it at home. I know you have one of those fancy cool kids coffee makers at home.
Yeah,
and
but I didn't use it.
And you stopped at Starbucks.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of just curious, what happened with Starbucks? There's probably a reason, and then that reason I could ask about that. And I bet eventually I'd find something that I'm interested in. And you're a friend of mine, so most of your life is interesting to me. But a new person,
sure.
Can we just be honest? When you meet somebody for the first time, everything about them is not interesting. Just not. There's some people and they want to I'll just be pass. And just pass. It's fine. In our first conversation, look for that connected piece and then ask more about that. Because people are offering you a lot of different options. Because people will be if they'll ask me what if I just don't want to talk about what they're talking about? And I was there's always options. Somebody says, I went fishing last week down in Florida. And you're oh my gosh, I hate outdoorsy fishing type things.
Yeah.
Well, how did they get into fishing? How did you get into fishing? To be honest, I don't like fishing at all. How did you get into it? Oh, well, my dad taught me when we were out on a boat. You like relationships?
Yeah.
He's now telling you about his relationship with his dad.
That's good.
Well, how was that? Was that do you think you love fishing because you did it with your dad, or do you think you just love fishing? And they'll be I think, you know what I mean? Now we can find out your relationship with your dad. And now you have the opportunity to share about your relationship.
It's a lot more behind it.
Yeah. But if you love fishing, if you brought up fishing, I would be all on board.
And that would be the connection point.
I don't want to hear about your dad. I would love to hear if you caught any tarpon.
Yeah.
I do want to hear about your dad eventually, but tarpon first.
Yeah.
So follow your curiosity. One other tool. One thing I see people do a lot in conversation that is so slow and doesn't work great. If you want to build a connection, don't just try to find it and point it out. So if I sat next to somebody on a plane and she said, we're making cheesecake for Thanksgiving. And I go, oh, my daughter makes cheesecake for all our Thanksgiving every year. It's like a berry thing. It just doesn't work as good.
Sure.
Ask a follow-up question. Curiosity beats connection. Curiosity leads to connection more than just bringing it up. Somebody be oh, I'm from Ohio. Be my friend lives in Ohio. I'm I don't care.
Do you know my friend?
Yeah. Do you know Oscar? Do you know Oscar? He lives in Cincinnati. You're
no.
I don't know. It's funny when I get my haircut, if I tell them I work at a church, this is the most common place because the person cutting my hair will get a little uncomfortable. And they'll be sure. And they'll find some associated thing to bring up. Whoa.
Yeah.
My neighbor's dog walker actually went to church once. They said it was real nice.
Yeah.
And I'm you don't have to do that, dude. I am a normal human being that says he works at a church sitting in your chair.
Yeah.
Tell me you don't got a couple questions. Fling them at me, baby.
And they do, right?
They do, but they're going with connection and associated detail that they have in their head because that feels like connection as opposed to a question that would lead to actual what, when I said I work in a church and you don't go to church, what curiosity came up in you?
Yeah.
Have you always been Christian? Ask.
Yeah.
Ask. And I think the reason people don't ask is because if you ask a question, you might get rejected. And that is the price to play. You don't get connection without the possibility for rejection. There's you can't do it. So people are like, I would like to avoid rejection, but I would like connection. And I would say that does not work that way.
Yeah, the costliness of actually trying to connect with others. Like you mentioned awkwardness, like that's got to be a good chunk of connecting with others, right? Is just kind of working through awkwardness.
100%. Awkward, but worth it. It was my friend Andy used to say all the time.
Yeah.
He goes, it's awkward, but like it's awkward, but worth it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I like that. Sometimes it's not.
Sure.
It's not worth it. Hey, I got to go. Have you ever, can we just have a brief commercial here? Have you ever pretended to take a phone call to leave a social situation?
All the time.
Have you really?
Sorry, hold on. I got to take this.
I'm dead serious. Have you ever faked a phone call to leave a thing?
I don't know if I can remember doing that. No, but I've wanted to a lot for sure.
I have. I think I did it in the last year. And I was in a workshop at a conference and I was like second row. And like I could see the white of the speaker's eyes. And he started talking and it seemed...
So you weren't in a conversation, you were in a...
I was in like a professional setting.
Yeah.
But there was only like 40 people in the room. And I was like, I don't think I can just get up, turn my back on this human being and walk out of this room.
Yeah.
I need something for his psyche to feel okay. So I picked up and I did it real urgently, like and apologetically. So I like nobody can see me here, but I picked it up and I held my hands up, I shrugged my shoulders, my head. I did the turtle where I tucked my head in my shoulders. Oh, sorry. And I put my hands to my hair. I was like, hey, one second. And I walked out the room and then I put my phone in my pocket and I couldn't decide if I was a terrible human being or very considerate.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of both.
I think so.
I'm sure he felt weirdly comforted and also offended that you got up and left in the middle of his talk.
But how much worse had I just gotten up, turned on my heels, and walked out?
Peace out, yeah.
Like very clearly signaling to the room that what he had to say was not worth my 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I think that was the reality. Yeah. Anyhow, I was just curious if you ever did that.
So yeah, I've definitely made a call to someone in a social situation where I'm like, this is a good time to get on a phone call because I don't want to actually talk and have a conversation.
You just couldn't bring yourself to fake it.
No, you got to call someone. Yeah. Yeah. A lifeline. Connect with others when you don't want to connect with others. All right. So curiosity.
Connect with others. If you don't want to connect with this person, connect with somebody that you do to get out of connecting with this person.
Yeah. Someone you like more. Yeah. And there's a lot of people probably who are saying like, I'm probably doing a lot of this already and I'm working pretty hard at it, but I'm not getting a lot in return from other people. Like, what would you say to someone like that?
I would say the thing that you will discover if you get better at asking questions, you get curious, you start asking questions, is you are going to be in a tiny, tiny minority and it can feel lonely. Mm-hmm. And so there's two things I would say. One, just frame that a lot of people are like receiving the gift of your curiosity and your kindness. And so know that does matter and is meaningful. Two is that you can share at the appropriate time in a connection without somebody asking. Sometimes people are curious, they just stink at asking questions. And so separate those two things. Like I genuinely think there are a lot of people that are really curious about other people, but they just don't have the skill set to ask a good question. Mm-hmm. And so don't wait for somebody to ask you a good question to share something meaningful. Mm. I've been in interviews, I've been in relationships, and I've said to somebody, I just feel like they never asked me any questions. And they're like, you kind of told us what we wanted to know in the questions you asked and in the things that you shared. Mm-hmm. So I like the kind of the 2 questions and a response model. It's just the most packaged way to say, so like if somebody shared something, I would ask a couple questions. And then as they're finishing up, I would find something in what they said that I connected to and related with, and I would share.
Because you're helping the other person when you do that. You're sharing a little bit of your own story, and they have something to latch onto and maybe ask you a question.
Maybe. And the other thing you can do is you can offer, I didn't make this up. It's around the internet. I don't know who made it up, but offering threads. So when we offer things, we can make it more interesting to ask about, or we can make it less interesting to ask about. A great example is if somebody says to you, hey, where are you from? And you could be like, I live in Abingdon. Mm-hmm. They're probably not asking any follow-up questions, right? But if somebody said, hey, if they asked me, hey, where do you live? I could say, oh, we live in Abingdon in this like little cute community. Like we just really wanted to live somewhere that are like our kids can make friends in the neighborhood. And we've always wanted land, but we said, hey, in this season, we want to live close to people in community. And we really love the school. So it's kind of a perfect spot for us, There's a lot in there, right? You found out I have kids. You found out I wish I had land. And so there's 3 or 4 things that if the person is interested in asking me a question and they're interested about that, they have an opportunity to, as opposed to giving brief answers. People are going to have a hard time following up with questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So threads and when you're listening to somebody, listen to their threads to find ways that you can navigate the conversation. And the last thing I would say in connection is as you get good at asking questions, you're going to find that you do need to find other people that are good at this, right? We need to kind of build a nucleus of people that are good at this. And I think you do need to kind of protect that a little bit. Not like be exclusive. You need to be connecting with lots of people, but like find a friend. Like I really enjoy our conversations because I think both of us are pretty good at asking questions and being curious and holding space. And that's a real gift to me because I think there's a lot of people who would receive my question asking and would feel connected, but I would walk away not feeling as connected. So I think anytime you grow in any way, you're going to find yourself a little isolated from the community that you're in. And you're going to, you find yourself in that in-between season where you're like, I don't quite fit in with this group, but I haven't found my new people that know how to operate this way, whether it be financial or relational or, I mean, even what's the Chance the Rapper song? I know you were waiting till we got to a Chance.
Finally.
We don't do the same drugs. It's a profound song. Like the idea that when you're in a group of people and this is how they connect by complaining. And you decide, I'm not going to complain anymore. I'm going to ask questions and be curious. You're going to find that you don't fit in. It's not a sign that something's wrong. I just want to speak to the sense that like, as you grow, you're going to feel a little lonely in the in-between seasons, the liminal spaces between this community and this community. It might feel a little bit lonely and it might be inside the same macro community. You just need to find like 1 or 2 other people that are on a different kind of wavelength.
Yeah. And it's okay to feel that and to work on finding those 1 or 2 people. And
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not cutting everyone else off. You're just, that's a basic human need, like a couple people that really you can listen to and be listened to by. I think that's really good.
And we started with making sure you're owning your stuff because somebody could take that advice and be like, yeah, well, I just need to find the right people. We're past that now.
Totally different in the context.
Totally different.
Yeah.
We've grown, we're serving the people around us, and now we're feeling drained because we're around people that just take. So now we have to find somebody else that knows how to give and receive. And man, if you've never had that relationship with anybody, it's life-giving. It's so meaningful to have somebody that knows how to ask questions about you and hold space. And like I say, I genuinely think not all therapeutic stuff can be replaced by that by any means. But there's a big chunk of it.
One of the needs, yeah.
Holding space and asking questions. All the coaching literature out there, ask questions, hold space. Ask questions, hold space. And I keep going, but coaching is friendship. This is kind of odd.
Sure.
Ask loving questions and hold space.
Yeah, that's really good. So a lot of really good tips there, and that sort of thing takes a long time to cultivate. And talk to me about community. Community is the buzzword.
Yeah, it's the hardest one to get to. This is the part that I struggle with the most.
Sure.
Like I just have a hard time moving from that connected, like where I feel connected. Like I have so many people in my life that I feel really like connected with. We can have a great conversation. We enjoy. Community requires a degree of access to one another that is sacrificial. And it requires like everybody making the jump sort of at the same time. And it requires just reps and time. We moved to Maryland 2.5 years ago. No, 2 years ago. And just now we're going to things that we went to 2 times. And we're going the 3rd time and we're talking about memories. Or we're seeing that person again for this holiday. And the most meaningful things in life, community being one of them, job satisfaction being one of them, they're not measured in hours or weeks or months. You do something for 3 weeks and be like, I'm a champion. I did it 3 weeks. Not months, it's years.
Yeah.
It's not measured in weeks or months. It's measured in years. And you can be intentional and you can condense a lot down into 6 months. Church world is really good at this when we do retreats with students or young adults. Like you can catalyze relationships. Like they can speed up.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you doing? TIME.
Yeah.
Just time, baby. You're you're spending constant time
Hours
together.
packed into a week.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you spent a weekend with a group of people and you spent 3 straight days together, 40, 50 hours of that 2,000 was logged there. If you just did that over coffee every 6 weeks, because that's how long it takes to get with somebody.
Yeah.
You're going to take a lifetime before you get 2,000 hours. Like somebody needs to just sit down and do a calculator. Like at the rate that I'm interacting with people, how long is it going to be before I hit 2,000 hours with one of these people? It's going to be a long time. Go on a vacation with somebody. Like, but you got to get the reps in and you got to just keep showing up. Show up when it's awkward. Show up when you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And when I worked in real estate for like 2 seconds, God bless all the real estate agents out there that are like kind, loving people, because I couldn't do it. Just saw somebody on Zillow and I wanted to tackle them. They would tell you, like, I really did. I was in church and I like looked over somebody's shoulder and they were like flipping through Zillow. And I had like no money in my bank account and a real estate agent's license. And I was like, "You looking at houses?" And that was the moment I was like, I can't do this. This isn't what I'm made for. This isn't what I'm made for. But I remember they would tell you, like, just show up to the office. Like, but what's at the office? Just show up. Just show up. And in community, I'm like, just show up. You're like, yeah, but what are they going to be doing there? What are we going to talk about? Is it worth my time?
Who's going to be there?
Who's going to be there? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Will you just show up? Just show up and just keep showing up.
That might be one of the hardest parts of it too, is like everything about us is trained not to care about that. Like all.
Which part?
Just internet stuff. I guess the patience aspect of it is really hard. Cultivating relationships over a long, long period of time when you just want to get it. Like social media gives me that. Like when I send a meme to my friend over DMs or whatever, there's like an instant place of connection. Or dating apps are kind of built that way, right? Where you connect and then you're together or whatever. Like the long haul, patient cultivating of relationships, it kind of annoys me even that you even brought that up, because it is probably the hardest part. It's like,
so annoying. It takes a long time, and you just, novelty sells, anger sells, complaining sells. None of those things drive community. Just like long patience in the same direction, you know? I've always said that it would be cool to live 2 lives. One where I got to move every 2 years to experience all the things of the world, and one where I like posted up in one spot. Yeah. Have you ever read Jayber Crow? Have we talked about that?
We have talked about Jayber Crow.
I love Jayber Crow. It's just this barber in this small town in Kentucky. And the idea of like relationships and how long formed they are, and how it's a cultivated thing and a stewardship thing. It's just so beautiful. And at the rate everybody's moving, what's crazy is that people will move. Like, I moved from Atlanta to Raleigh. Why? I got a promotion. How much more are they paying you? $15,000 a year. Okay. Just so we're clear, your community was worth $15K a year to you.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what we said.
Yeah.
But we're lonely. We're disconnected. At some point, this is one of the things I actually really dig about Maryland when we moved up here. I don't meet a lot of people that are just trying to move out. Yeah. Even though like taxes are pretty high, like cost of living isn't the cheapest. There are cheaper places to live. And usually when I go around and I ask people why not? Why would you not leave? Why incur the cost of staying? Community. Yeah. And it's worth more than you could probably put a dollar amount on. Yeah. But you just got to stay put, man. You got to stay put, be patient, and go through the awkward stuff. I will say, if you want to speed it up, get in a fight with somebody. It's like you really don't have a friend until you've gotten in a fight. Have you gotten in a fight? We did get in a fight.
At least one.
We've gotten in a couple. Yeah. And then I had to you had to feel that like uncomfortableness. You had to decide if you were going to hit the eject button or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like
I pushed through it.
Yeah.
Awkward, but worth it.
Awkward, but worth it. So
That's good.
Maybe I guess I'm saying, just summarize the whole podcast up. Just get in as many fights as early on as possible with as many people, but stay friends with them, and it'll speed up community.
Yeah.
Not really, but in some ways, if everything's polite and
try it out.
Try it out. Let me know how it goes.
I want to get into, before we wrap up, where have you seen this stuff play out in maybe Christian community in particular, and where is God in the whole process of human beings connecting with each other? Why does it matter? That sort of thing.
It's like at the foundation and wrapping it all up at the same time. And that it's at the foundation, I mean, like, in order to connect with another person, I have to not put the weight of my identity on that interaction. So like on my Instagram channel, I'll say, you're known and loved. Because they say like to be, I think it was Tim Keller. He said to be loved but not known, that's just shallow. You know what I mean? Like, you love me, but you don't really know me. So it doesn't feel real. And to be known but not loved, oh God, that's just like our greatest
Yeah,
fear.
wow.
But to be known and loved is transformational.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the world, because the modern existence is the kingdom of God with the king removed. Right? That is the modern liberal existence.
Mhm.
Dominion by Tom Holland was a wonderful book on that
Sure,
helps
yeah.
kind of go like all this good stuff that's in our world right now is, and I know that's a bold claim for somebody listening if they're a skeptic. I think it stands up, right? All this generosity, the kindness. But the problem is that you have a bunch of people going around trying to have community, but then you're like getting your identity from that interaction. It's just too much. Like you can't go have a conversation with somebody and be like, my worth is tied up in that conversation.
Sure.
But if you can, the gospel informs that like Jesus, seeing exactly where I am, said, I love you fully. He both forgives me and then empowers me to be who I'm made to be. I can then go into community and I can contribute. And I can also sacrifice knowing that like he'll meet the needs that people won't meet. And it's really tough to have deep, deep community without that. I think people are still having tastes of it. Like I think it's silly to suppose that like people that aren't Christians aren't experiencing community.
Yeah, of course.
That would be absurd. But there's certainly a measure of foundation of being like, man, when you're known and loved. I also think that there's something beautiful about the Christian church. Like I'm trying to think I'm curious if you can think of another one. I can't think of another place where if you are not mentally and emotionally healthy, that you would have the opportunity to sit at a circle and have a real conversation with people that are. Like, can you think like if you're kind of a mess,
It's a rare thing, yeah, everywhere, I feel like.
those people are going to exclude you.
Yeah.
And honestly, kind of for good reason.
Yeah.
You're complaining, you're a mess, and this person's not. And they're just like, I'm not looking for a complaining person that's in a mess. I'm looking for other people that are at my level. But in the Christian church, we are kind of all informed by the idea that we're all broken. So kind of you can show up wherever you are. And that's crazy.
Yeah, there really is nothing like that in the world. Yeah.
I can't think of it. I think it was Diary of a CEO podcast. She was talking about you attract people at similar psychological levels as you. And I think that's really, really true. And she was just like, people are like, I want to date somebody that's amazing. How do I find somebody that's amazing? And you're like, well, are you amazing? Because that amazing person is looking for another amazing person.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? You're sitting there eating Cheetos, playing video games, and you're not taking care of yourself. And you're just like, I just want to find this beautiful woman that, you're like, you're going to probably need to look in a mirror before you look out there.
Yeah.
But in the Christian church, we kind of all embrace our brokenness. And so we all have this central starting point that's really, really beautiful. But it does require, like you can show up day one wherever you are. But over time, even the Christian church is going to require ownership of your stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's everything in the gospel. Everything is accessible after ownership of your brokenness. You can't show up and be like, I'm already awesome. You're like, well, or it's not my fault. It's everybody else's fault. That doesn't work even in the Christian church.
Yeah.
And that might sound like offensive, but if you show up and you're mad that the church hasn't offered you community, but you were unwilling to own your stuff, it will literally exclude you from that's why we started with it. It will literally exclude you from every form of community, including Christian community.
Yeah.
Though, even in the Christian church, there's little circles of people that just want to complain together.
Sure.
Somebody said, especially.
Well, but not me. Yeah, like you said, but not me.
I didn't say it. I was just giving voice to somebody.
But people, no matter what space you're in, like we're trained to figure out like how is this space going to meet my needs? And in some ways, the Christian community is built on something else, which is like we're a community of people who's real and honest with one another. We're going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And we're going to empower one another to, like you said, give yourself self-sacrificially to meet others' needs, which is a crazy reversal.
10 people stood in a circle and everybody demanded that they have their needs met. Nobody gets their needs met. And that feels like the current cultural moment. Everybody just shouting about their needs. They shout it on the internet. They shout it to their friends. They shout it to their in-laws. They shout it to their parents. They shout it to their therapist. And you do need empathy, but at some point, nobody's needs are going to get met that way. And if you have 10 people in a circle and one person decides to meet somebody else's needs, that person's going to drown. But if all 10 people decide to meet one other person's needs, everybody gets cared for. And I think that's when you look in the book of Acts and you look at how they were managing money and time and their homes and their meals, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
You had thousands of people going, I will contribute. And the person that chooses not to contribute and to not own their stuff violates the sanctity of that commitment. And we're still trying to reckon with that. It's complicated.
Yeah.
But man, there's like you get the picture of it,
Yeah.
you know, of the beauty of everybody being like,
Yeah,
I will care for
gosh,
my neighbor.
The central feature of that community was like the Holy Spirit poured out and immediately they met the needs of others. Like that was what they were about, was like, what are the needs, financial, whatever, like we're going to meet them. We're going to give ourselves to others.
But
Crazy.
I think it's worth saying, because what's going to happen in people's brains when they hear that, it happens in mine.
Mhm.
You know, I'm 36. So like most of my adulthood, I've been trained by the internet and what sales has been, the way sales works in kind of modern capitalism is small yeses. Yes, 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 yes. Eventually big ask. I take a big yes from you. We've been taken advantage of so often that when we hear that invitation of giving of yourself, we think, you say jump, everybody's going to jump. But I bet I'm only going to jump and I'm going to get taken advantage of. It's tricky. And yes, that could happen. But how's it working? How's it working taking?
Yeah.
You know, you got to find some people that are going to give. And it's not always going to work perfect, but we're not selling.
Yeah.
We're trying to be in community.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other rabbit hole.
And entrusting yourself to a community is it's hard. So trust is a whole other thing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Another podcast.
Another time.
Cole, thanks for being on, dude. Any other resources like you would point people to?
I really, 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 really like the book, Ask Powerful Questions. I think it's Ask Powerful Questions to Create Conversations That Matters. I think they've shortened the title. It's by a guy named Will Wise, co-authored by a guy named Chad Littlefield. It's like a real practical guide to connection that I really, really love. I would check that out. I don't think there's a ton of great resources, if I'm honest. Get in the trenches and do it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. And I would, obviously follow Cole and keep up with all of his helpful tips and stuff that he's continuing to learn and give to others.
It's painfully practical, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah. Cole, thanks, dude.
Thanks for having me.
We were so excited to finally have Cole on to share some of what he's been learning and teaching to others. I learned so much from this conversation, especially Cole's emphasis on the power of listening and curiosity, how it leads us toward further connection with others. I took away a lot from what Cole shared, and I hope you did too. As you're processing through all of this, we want you to know that this podcast is a resource of Mountain Christian Church in Maryland, and our door is always open as you explore what you believe. You can connect anytime through the email in the show notes. That's where you'll also find links to resources from today's episode. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with a friend. Thanks again for being here. Until next time, take care.